Hello and a very warm welcome to the Adventure Show. This month we're at the original mountain marathon, an extreme test of endurance, navigation and sheer willpower.
I'm walking backwards faster than I'm walking forwards.
No. Windy, wet, cold, horrendous. What can possibly go wrong?
On day one, competitors will have to run a marathon, but not just any marathon, one up and down Scotland's lowland mountains. And if that's not all, they have to carry all their kit with them to stay out overnight.
And after a very uncomfortable night in a tent, they have to do it all over again, navigating between the checkpoints over a 50-mile course, which may, in fact, if they navigate wrongly, become a little bit longer.
Ta-da! It never works for me.
Right, get the glasses on again.
Also in the show, we'll be looking at the lightweight gear that some of the runners will be using in this marathon. We're heading north to Glen Affric to discover some of the wildlife on offer. We'll be meeting a remarkable woman who's still climbing despite being paralysed from the waist down, and watching me suffer in my preparation for the Strathpuffer 24 mountain bike marathon.
Relax your right arm completely.
Relax my right arm, he says, like it's easy. But first, to the original mountain marathon, the greatest outdoor challenge in the UK.
This year's our 40th, and I remember the time when Jerry Charnley, the founder, who's no longer with us, he came along and knocked at my door at the time and said, I need some prizes for this event. I said, and he said, you know, it's carrying all your equipment in rucksacks for 2 days. I said, oh, that sounds like a good idea.
Back in 1968, the idea of combining super accurate map and compass skills in a 2-day race across the hills was completely new.
At that time, mountaineers navigated in a very sort of, you know, rough and ready way, enough to find your way up the mountain and down or whatever.
It always helps if you go to number one first, but that was my fault.
Orienteering was very new at the time, and mountaineering was very long established. And he wanted to fuse those two skills together of finding your way accurately and quickly and safely, together with looking after yourself, carrying all your gear over the mountains and being completely self-contained for 2 days.
To take part, every competitor must carry tent, sleeping bag, stove, spare clothing, food and first aid. In fact, everything they need to survive in the hills overnight.
It's a very important safety issue. I mean, we don't really bother about people on Saturday because people are equipped to last 2 days in the hills. So if people don't reach the overnight campsite, we just presume they have camped out independently. We've got at least over 30 radio marshals out on the hills this weekend, monitoring things. We've got the radio points on the map. So our safety and security are very good. But we don't really start accounting for people until about 4 o'clock on the Sunday afternoon.
There's a choice of 7 different courses over these hills, with the toughest being a double marathon for the elite class. With 1,500 teams from all over Europe, there'll be a staggered start to the race. And until that starting gun sounds, none of the competitors know where they'll be going. So countdown, 5 seconds to go. 3,000 competitors here at the Lowther Hills in the Borders, heading out for 2 days and 2 marathons and lots of hills. The original mountain marathon is underway. Of course, mountain marathon is very unlike any other race that they start off with a little jog and then you have to stop, of course, to check the route, because the route is all important. It's not simply about running this race, it's about finding the checkpoints, making sure you hit them, making sure you dib them, and making sure you do not get lost. There's no point in being the fastest runner. You have to make sure that you can navigate as well, and that's where teamwork comes in. So I guess this is very important to get this bit right, guys, yes?
Well, we hope so. My navigation's never good though.
Oh, right.
I rely on this one to step in the right direction.
We're agreed on nothing. Yeah.
Well, keep agreeing, that's the most important thing.
I'm not used to that, reading under pressure.
You better get used to it over the next couple of days.
We're going to think about like a small leg at a time, I think.
A small leg at a time.
So we don't have to head around the whole thing.
fun.
Good luck, guys.
And that is what it's all about. A team that can work, run, navigate, and stay pals are the ones that will win.
What were you expecting?
I just wonder if they'll still be laughing
Can't even find me maps.
after 52 miles. With 1,500 teams setting off at minute intervals, it'll be quite a while before everyone's on the move. Meanwhile, Duncan's up on the first hill.
And as you can see, the mists now drop. The time is just about 8:30 in the morning. The cloud's sitting at about 400 to 500 metres now, and this is going to make navigation and actually finding the dib points, the control points, really, really difficult. Go on, tell me what your strategy is for surviving the next couple of days.
Just keep it going steady, really, not to go too fast too soon, and don't get lost. I think that's the key thing, really.
It does look like it's going to be a bit of a challenge today.
Well, navigationally, if the mist's like this, it's going to be interesting, so you have to know where you are.
Right, that way.
Yeah.
That way. That way.
Someone who's been involved with this race from the very start is Fred Charnley. Today he's one of the 200 volunteers who help organise the event. But for many years he competed himself.
It's gruelling. You are going across naked, rugged country, and it's one heck of a challenge.
Hi, Mum. How's it going, all right?
Yeah, we're good.
The real secret of orienteering and the mountain marathon is that you can read and understand and navigate by contours, because these are like fingerprints. They don't change, and you can navigate very, very precisely with them.
No, get down there, Peter.
And the other great skill is to be able to guess your height and to contour around on a constant height. And the good old sheep are useful for that, because very often you can find a sheep trot that's going the right way, if you're lucky.
1.5 kilometres that way.
That way. Okay, away we go.
Hopefully you can see now that the wind is beginning to pick up. It's about 25 to 30 knots at the moment, and it is forecast today to go up to about 60. So for people in lightweight hill running gear, if you're moving, it's fine. If they're going to stop, or if they get lost, or if you somehow run out of energy, it's going to start being a problem. It will be a tough race.
Well, for the moment, we'll leave the competitors slogging up and down the hills for hours on end and rejoin Mike Parsons, who spent his entire career designing equipment to be used in the mountains. But these days, his focus is on trying to make things as light as they can possibly be.
Designing outdoor gear is easy if you leave something off it, yeah? And so I did a restart. And what I did, I created a concept where we call it lean weights. So you can actually remove things from the product according to the sort of day you're going to have. So for example, with one pack that starts at full weight, it's 1,800 grams. And you can break it down so that it ends up at like 700 grams.
In the packs as well, the bit in the back of the pack becomes the roll mat or the carry mat as well,
Yeah.
when you're for overnight sleeping as well. That's fairly ingenious.
Instead of rolling it, which is very bulky on the back, I've made it so it's concertinas and it's part of the pack, so that it's very light and very compact. Inside the pack, it forms a back structure, but it's your bed when you get to the camp.
Can things get even lighter, do you think, in the future?
They can. It can go lighter and lighter. As a matter of fact, we made our first packs back in '74, and they were lighter than today.
So they were actually lighter then?
Yeah, because there was nothing on them, whereas now they need pockets for hydration, for bottles, and so on.
A lot of people will watch this who enjoy going out into the hills, maybe for a walk, a gentle walk, say. But the idea of running around the hills carrying your full kit is just totally ridiculous to them. But you can use the stuff that you design and sell for that as well, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. Hey, I'm not doing... I still pretend I'm doing some running about, but my generation need to go lighter for sure. Otherwise, we're not going to keep arriving there on the summit. So that's really important for us, just as important, if not more important than the lightweight people. Unless we get our weight down, we can't continue to do the things that we have a passion for in the outdoors.
So right now we're heading to one of the most distinctive hills just north of Glasgow to join someone who's definitely got a passion for the outdoors, Scotland's best known walker, Cameron McNeish.
There's a number of mountains in Scotland that have the ability to stop me completely dead in my tracks. One of them is the Buccleuch Moor from that certain corner on the A82 across Rannoch Moor. And another one is the rugged outline of this hill called the Cobbler, high in the Arrochar Alps above Loch Long. There were really three waves of exploration here in the Cobbler. At the turn of the 20th century, the early Victorian mountaineers would come here and test themselves on the crags of the hill there. And then during the years of the Depression, a certain crane driver from Glasgow by the name of Jock Nimlin teamed up with a guy called Andy Sanders, who was later to form a well-known club called the Craig Dhu. And they put up routes on the Cobbler like Recess Route, Ardgarten Wall and Nimlin's Route Direct. But it was after the Second World War that the Craig Dhu Club really came here and took possession of the Cobbler. You know, it's interesting nowadays we regard bouldering as a kind of modern phenomenon. But in those days of the 50s, people like Hamish McInnes, Johnny Cunningham, Mick Noon, Patsy Walsh and the others of the Craig Dhu Club would come here and practice on these Narnain boulders before going and doing the big routes on the Cobbler itself. Routes that even today are regarded as test pieces. You know, it's a curious thing, but the first time I ever climbed this mountain as a sort of 16 or 70-year-old pimply youth, I was wandering up the start of the forest and I was suddenly joined by this little collie dog, and he just kind of evaporated out of the trees. And he was a cheeky wee dog, he had a kind of air of impudence about him, and he kept me company all the way to the summit. And I seem to remember he ate half my lunch as well. And he kept me company all the way back down, and then just as suddenly as he'd appeared, he vanished into the forest again. And I remember thinking that wee dog almost typified the character of this mountain. It was almost like the spirit of the Cobbler. Because the Cobbler, although it's a wee hill at 2,899 feet, it has the character of a much, much bigger mountain. And I always get the impression that it's kind of cocking a snoot at its bigger Munro neighbours here, like Ben Narnan and Ben Vane. And to quote Billy Connolly, I love it, I just love it. And it's good. You know, if I had to put it into my top 5 favourite mountains, it would probably go in there about maybe number 3 or number 4. It's a great hill. Climbers and hill walkers have been arguing for generations about the name of this mountain. And I must admit, if I look at this mountain, I don't see anything about cobblers in it. But the theory is that up in the middle summit, it's supposed to look like a cobbler working over his last. Watched over by the south summit, his faithful wife Jean, the cobbler's wife. And on the north summit up here, this great overhanging prow is quite commonly known as the Ram's Head. But you know, in Timothy Pont's map of the 15th century, he describes this mountain as Sui Arter. And Sui is a word that is often used to describe royalty or sainthood. So that would suggest perhaps that the Arter was Arthur, King Arthur of the Arthurian legends. Coming up through the corrie here, it's mercifully been quite quiet. There's not been very much wind. In fact, at times it's been hushed like a cathedral. But I know when I take half a dozen steps onto the summit ridge here, the wind is going to come and hit me. Wham! So let's see what it's like. This is the north summit of the mountain, commonly known as the Walker Summit, because simply you can walk here. The main summit, the middle summit, is reserved for those who can rock climb a little bit. And that's kind of part of the impudence of this mountain. It's part of its cheek, if you like. The middle summit it looks to be pretty icy and pretty horrible today, so we're not even going to attempt to go and look at that. And we'll make do with this summit. And it's just a pity that it's so cloudy, because on a good day, you can see right down Loch Long to the hills of Cowell, across to Ben Lomond above Loch Lomond, and of course the other hill of the Arrochar Alps, Ben Narnan and Ben Vane. You come on a day like this, it's just your luck.
But from the winter grandeur of the Archer Alps, we're heading back to the borders, the Lowther Hills and the original mountain marathon. The runners are now spread out all over the hills, and the marshals must check them in at the control points.
Number are you?
Number 23.
The weather's still not too bad on the lower slopes, but higher up, it's another story.
It kind of sorts the men out from the boys, so to speak. You know, you're up against the elements. You know, if you can hack it at this time of year in these kind of conditions, you can prove something to yourself quite well, really. Yeah, it's down to you. Nobody else can help you round.
I think we're going to nip down to
I reckon stay with plan A and go up to the right.
Yeah, follow the road down for a couple of 100 metres and then take a bearing and go straight up.
Of the 120 runners that have signed up for the elite extreme race, many have been coming back year after year. But some are comparative newcomers to the mountain marathon scene.
This is our second year. First time we've done it together though. Last year we both did it with 2 other guys. Joe didn't finish it last year, he got lost.
No, I reckon we're best going down, Joe.
You reckon down?
Yeah. It's a bit too rough, isn't it?
Have a good one.
Have a good day yourself.
But good warm-up experience to know what it's about, know what it's like to run with a big heavy bag, but this is our first real good crack at it.
Brendan's been doing mountain marathons for a good few more years than I have. We started in the early 90s.
My first one was 1993, which was at Drumlanrig Castle, which isn't too far from here. I just got hooked, really. Although after every one, I say to myself, that's the last one. I always come back the following year to do it again.
First mountain marathons, I was sort of 16. My brother and sister had done them, and I was desperate. And you have to be 16 to actually enter. So as soon as I was 16, I got an entry and did my first one then. But I've done like 16, 17 since then.
What about navigating? Who's the navigator, or do you both do a bit of that?
He's definitely the better navigator than me.
Well, I tend to do most of it because I've got more experience of using the 1 to 40,000 maps. Well, we've both been orienteering since we were 10, 11 years old, so...
It definitely helps that.
We've got a background from using orienteering maps.
It's not just like finding the exact checkpoints, it's also getting the right route choice and looking at the lines the whole time. You know from the map where the really boggy stuff's going to be and to avoid that, so it's quite sort of subtle.
How's it going, boys?
Not bad.
Good.
It's a lovely view from here.
Well, not quite, for conditions on the tops have been getting steadily worse. Rain, mist and high winds. It's a test for runners, camera equipment and my co-presenter, Duncan McCallum.
We're here at the last but one checkpoint and it is wet and cold. And I expect that there should be runners coming through here sometime quite soon, but they are 45 minutes late, which roughly equates to 6 or 7 kilometres. So they're almost an hour late to this checkpoint, and that's a testament to the dreadful conditions we've had here on the hill today.
It's just so windy. So, but yeah, visibility's rubbish.
I think you may be disappointed that this is not your checkpoint.
It isn't.
But for those who chose one of the easier courses on offer today, the end is now in sight, and it isn't a moment too soon.
How were conditions today?
Pretty fierce about halfway round. Started off good, dry, then a bit of rain, and it was the wind that was really fierce. We're running into a southerly wind for a lot of the second half.
And now, of course, let's get the tent up, get some food
right.
on board.
I'm looking forward to the next 12 hours. We'll drink, we'll eat, we'll drink, we'll eat, and then we'll sleep.
Gonna get a brew on.
Pot noodles, and then Swiss roll and custard.
The biggest challenge of the day, isn't it? Putting the tent up.
Would you like to give us a hand and put that damn thing down? He hasn't got 2 spare tent pegs in his pocket, has he?
Food and rest, of a sort, for some, but the elite class are still out on the hill.
Andy, it's almost 7 hours now since the elite lot set out. Is that fair enough?
Yes, I'm not too concerned because I'd like them to actually complete the day one between 6 hours and 7 hours, but it's got quite windy. The mist has set in on the last few kilometres back.
How important is it over a 2-day race like this that you actually conserve the energy?
You can't really, because you've got to keep taking fuel on board. It's as simple as that. You can't sustain enough inside your systems. You've got to keep refuelling.
Happy days! 1 to go.
It's been a long wait, but at last the elite teams are reaching that penultimate checkpoint. We've no clear idea yet of who is in the overall lead, because this morning the fastest were last to set off. But from this point it's downhill all the way to the campsite.
Feeling fit?
Not far to go, should we?
I'm here too.
If you consider that these guys who've just run past us have already run a marathon, and this is no Ponty marathon on the street, this is hardcore, over the hills, navigation in desperate conditions, and people make a big deal about running marathons in cities. This is completely a different league. Oh, it's a shame you dropped too low. How's the navigation been for the rest of the day?
One other little mistake like this. It's just the way it goes. But hard in the mist.
So how are the legs?
Very tight.
A small navigational mistake by Steve Birkinshaw and Morgan Donnelly has meant a tough additional climb right at the end of this long, long day.
Just to get a sense of how conditions are just now, it's about 4 o'clock on the Saturday afternoon. I'm wearing a base layer, a jacket, a puffer jacket over the top of that, then an outer shell, and I'm still absolutely freezing and pretty miserable as well. Now, these guys have just been out all day running in the hills. For them, they're cold, even colder than I am, much wetter than I am, and now they've got to put a tent up and get all the carbohydrates and all the liquids into their body, and then do it all again tomorrow. They're completely mad. Yeah. Now you're looking quite smiley and quite comfortable after that, but how tough was that today?
I found it really hard.
Yep.
Yeah, I started struggling after about 3 hours, so the last 3.5 hours was really hard.
And that's the refugee camp they'll be sleeping in tonight. In this rain, in this wind, in this mist, in this hell. And then another marathon in the morning.
And at the end of the first day, this is how the elite class looks. In third place with a time of 6 hours, 22 minutes and 59 seconds are Steve Birkinshaw and Morgan Donnelly. Brothers Andy and Joe Simmons are 6 minutes ahead of them. The current leaders, again brothers, are Sean and Brendan Boland with a time of 6 hours, 12 minutes, 29 seconds. Camping out in the pouring rain and howling wind after a day getting lost on the hills are perhaps not the right ingredients for a harmonious partnership. But over the last 40 years, there have been quite a few married couples who've braved their relationship on this race. Stan and Verena Johnston and Jane and Lewis Grundy, for example, but surely it's a recipe for arguments.
There aren't usually that many unless we make a mistake.
No.
And then it's really interesting. We both react very differently.
Any tea? Cakes? Burgers?
Lewis tries to run twice as quickly, which I can't do, whereas I try and sort of regroup and get the team back on track and get the team into a positive frame of mind.
You don't see that many teams that certainly live together as well. I think that's quite interesting. I think it's something we're really proud of, actually, aren't we?
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for coming out, folks.
Yeah. It's always been a potential divorce every year because we had different opinions all the time when we were going on the course.
Many people would say they know the Johnsons of old, and you can often hear them shouting at each other long before you see them. And if you can't hear them shouting, you can at least hear that high-pitched voice saying, "Wait for me, wait for me."
Oh no, he's there. Wonder where he was. Better wait for him. Oh, not fair, this man.
The thing over the years, we've learned to run with each other much more on these kind of events, and I've always had the stamina and Lewis has always had the speed, and we've gradually developed, and I've got more speed and he's got more stamina, so we've kind of met in the middle.
You can go home feeling desperately miserable and disillusioned with yourself and your performance and things like that. But when 6 months later you're saying, I wonder when the entry form comes out for next year, you know, and you're back at it again and you wonder why, but you know, you just keep going.
We're leaving the runners to endure one of the wildest nights of the year, and we're heading north to join a remarkable climber on one of Scotland's best known sea stacks.
I've never really climbed since I broke my back in a climbing accident. It could be quite challenging at the top of the stack because it's not overhanging there, so I could drag and have to drag my body across the rock a little bit.
This is the Old Man of Storr, off the northwest coast of Sutherland. It's 60 metres high and a challenging climb. Now most would think it impossible for a paraplegic like Karen Dark, not so her partner, Andy Kirkpatrick.
I knew Karen could climb up the rock. That would be easy because she's sort of very stubborn. Even if she had to kill herself, she would get to the top of that rope. So the big problem was getting to the bottom of the sea stack.
Karen Dark, who lives in Inverness, is an extraordinary woman. She was a keen outdoor enthusiast, a biker, runner and climber. Then at the age of 21, on a Scottish sea cliff, she had a traumatic accident that left her paralysed from the chest down. Since then, she's crossed the Karakoram Mountains by hand bike, sea kayaked 1,200 miles along the Canadian and Alaskan coastline, and made a 600-kilometre traverse of the Greenland ice cap. But this is the first time since her accident she's attempted anything like this. And it's not just the physical endeavour. Attempting to climb this sea stack will bring back memories of her accident.
The night before I had my accident, I was out with some friends in Aberdeen and we were just cycling back from the pub, and one of them had a loose mudguard on his bike, and I told him a story about a family friend who was paralysed when he went over the handlebars of his bike and broke his neck. And I said, I cannot imagine anything worse than being paralysed. I'd rather be dead than paralysed. Not knowing that 12 hours later that's what would happen. So it was a tough 4 or 5 years after becoming paralysed, just finding a way to live again and finding a way to feel happy living again and to feel comfortable with myself. And that was a long journey, and I spent a lot of time looking at people and being very jealous that they could move their leg muscles, or feeling a bit angry that people didn't use them. People who could would just sit on a sofa and watch telly and not get out there and do things. But at some point, it's time heals, and it does, and it's not something I think about now. It's just how it is and part of who I am, and I would definitely rather be living and having the experiences I'm having than dead. So it was a stupid thing to say.
She's paralysed from her chest. She hasn't got any stomach muscles, so she could just fall over, and she might have spasms in her legs, and she could fall over and she'd just fall in the sea. There's a million things you're trying to think of, like you could bang a leg and the leg could break. It is a really dangerous thing to do potentially, and I'm sure Mum and Dad wouldn't appreciate doing it, but you have to do these things, don't you? If you sit someone down on a pebble who's paraplegic, and they're there for half an hour, then potentially it could kill them because they could get a sore and they could die, and then little things like that you just don't really think about.
There you go. Is the rope running okay?
Oh God. I feel like some TV presenter or something who's never ever been climbing. I loved climbing. I used to be out there doing it all the time. Rock climbing, winter climbing, mixed stuff. Summers in the Alps for kind of a couple of months each summer. Winter climbing in Scotland. My life really was outside and doing different things. So it was hard to comprehend what a life not being able to move, being paralysed would be like.
Okay, just hang there. We'll just get you. Just wait till you're in balance.
I think it might be bringing back some bad memories of sea cliffs and climbing.
She's really scared, but I suppose if you fall off a sea cliff and you break your back, you're bound to be a bit scared of the sea and climbing. So, but I know she'll be all right. People who do really incredible things, if they fail, then they seem to be really, really stupid, and if they're successful, they seem to be really amazing and brave and wow, that was so, So yeah, so there's a very fine line between the two, really. If your hands are shaking, don't let the camera see it.
A question that I've recently got really interested in is, why do people do things that are so risky, where they've had lots of maybe friends die or they've had close near misses themselves and keep on doing it? And why, when someone like me has a serious accident and becomes paralysed, do you want to go back and do things again? My right leg's more droopy for some reason. I think it's because the leg harness of my proper harness is underneath rather than on top. I'm having fun if I can ignore where I am. I think if it's built into you, if you love being outside, if you love being in the wilderness, if you love adventure, it's part of your spirit, and it's quite hard to drop it, even though you may know the risks and know that it's possible that things could go wrong.
If I was in the same position as Karen, I would hope that someone would take the time to help me to go and to do things, because you can't do it by yourself. Some things you can't do, you are sort of limited to being on the water or skiing around, or you can't really go anywhere off tarmac really. It's very difficult, but the rewards of seeing someone, even if they don't want to do it, someone, you know, doing something that really is amazing.
Ready? Wait there, left shoulder. Doesn't like that position.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Is this alright? Twist around for you? Yeah. Grab the legs.
That's it.
Hey!
Woof.
How's it feel?
Stupid, amazing, great, scary.
When you get back at the end of the day and you paddle in and you've just paddled all the way around and climbed a sea stack and paddle all the way back again, you just get, it's almost like going on an expedition. It's the same as going to Patagonia or Alaska or somewhere. You have this real sense of we've just done something really stupid, but also really amazing and really special. And I'll always, you know, it's in my trophy cabinet of experiences, really.
Back to the original mountain marathon, and it's Sunday morning. The clocks have just gone back, but it's still dark at the campsite as the racers prepare for another day on the hills. Last night's conditions were really, really poor. The wind and the rain in particular. The noise inside the tents must have been horrendous, with the wind and the rain battering against them. And of course, the elite class and the A class are all running with the lightest possible equipment, and light, for all that they say, does mean slightly colder. Once more, there's a staggered start to today's race, but this time it's a chasing start. So if you came in second yesterday and you were, say, 5 minutes behind the leaders, then today you aren't allowed to start until 5 minutes after they've left. Yesterday, the fastest team in the elite category were the Boland brothers, Brendan and Sean. So how are you feeling this morning? Good night's sleep?
Reasonable, yeah. As good as it can be in weather like that. But the trouble is, when I changed my watch, I changed it wrong, so I actually went forward.
So you went forward?
3 hours. So we had a bit of a panic in the middle of the night.
Oh, right.
So we got another couple of pins then?
Yeah, sure. So were you up at something like 4 o'clock in the morning then?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
something
Yeah. Embarrassing.
So Brendan and Sean Boland with a 4-minute 7-second advantage over the rest of the field. They'll start first in the elite class, 7 o'clock in the morning. Amazing watching them just before they go off. They actually look quite cold, shivering. You know, they're carrying as little stuff as possible, these elite guys. And off they go. Next up will be Andy and Joe Simmons. But they've got 4 minutes and 7 seconds to get out of sight, because the Simmons brothers will have them in their view when they're going around the course, but they'll be keen to get up and away as quickly as possible. How are you feeling, boys?
Yep, good.
Did you have a good night?
Yeah, a little bit damp in the tent actually.
Like most people, I think, yeah. How much sleep did you have, do you reckon?
A couple of hours.
Couple hours.
Quite a lot. It's very broken sleep, isn't it?
Yeah.
So along the path and upstream.
Let's go, guys.
Have fun. These elite guys, they're navigating as they run, don't spend a lot of time stopping at all. With the lack of sleep, the cold and the wet, the damp, these guys seem to be able to keep running, keep looking at the map, keep looking at the compass, and get it right. Stephen Morgan coming up.
Stephen Morgan. Yeah. Interesting time.
Thanks. We have a bit of problem with the timekeeping this morning.
Stand around here for too long.
No, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, please. One on each.
And you've got, what, about 10 minutes behind the leaders, so you make that up?
But the other thing is, the guys that are second at the moment, they're fantastic runners. So if they latch onto us, you know, even if we catch them up, I don't think we'll outsprint them at the finish.
Right. So, and it could come down to that, of course.
Yeah.
You were saying you were feeling pretty weak when you came in yesterday. How are you feeling today?
I feel all right now, yeah. You can't really tell until you actually get going.
Okay.
First half hour.
Righty-ho.
I'll have an idea.
Good luck, Steve.
A lot of the competitors in the elite class in particular leaving it to the very last minute to come to the starting line because they don't want to be standing around getting cold. But of course there's all the faffing around of sticking the number on the bag, getting the waterproof outer layer off the bottom half anyway, because you don't want to be doing that while you're running, and getting yourself mentally and physically prepared for another mountain marathon. All the best, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
And even at this hour, Duncan's high on the hill.
So it's just after 7 in the morning on the first official day of winter, and we're just at the second checkpoint, and we've stepped back slightly so we don't actually direct them to the dibbing point. So the next few runners are going to be through here in about a couple of minutes' time.
With just 10 minutes separating the top 3 teams, Sean and Brendan Boland know there's no time to waste. Hard on their heels, the Simmons brothers still have plenty of energy in their legs, and some to spare. But Steve Birkinshaw and Morgan Donnelly are also setting off at a cracking pace, with no sign of yesterday's fatigue. Once again, there are 7 different classes racing here today, and at this checkpoint, the A teams are jostling with the elite.
Here we are.
Good luck for another day on the hills.
Cheers. I bet you're glad of being warm now, though.
Yeah. I'm too warm, to be honest.
Have you lost your partner?
No, he's staggering up the hill. He's having a whale of a time. As am I.
I've always really discounted these hills as being kind of in the middle of nowhere, but actually today with the light like this, they're really incredible. And I can appreciate them because I didn't spend a night in a damp tea bag.
To be like it was last night, I think I'd have been walking back to the car.
That was one of the most uncomfortable nights I've ever had.
Oh, catch me some speed up.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Fine, probably warmer than you were last night. Are you feeling
Probably
warm
drier
now?
as well.
Sorry?
Probably drier as well.
Yeah.
When it came down, it goes down in the annals of being rubbish.
Now this is how wet it was last night. There's a spring here that probably wasn't happening yesterday during the day. It's absolutely pouring out, but you can see here, I mean, that is unbelievable. And someone's had a tent on top of that. Oh, not for me.
A comfy night camping.
That is unbelievable.
It was a beautiful night. It had lots of epic moments in which we were trying to bail it out. Could have really done without it.
Are you pretty organised with your packing?
No, but not at the moment because we've just been told we're leaving at 8:05.
And you got 6 minutes, right? Okay. At 6:30 this morning, the queue for the toilets was incredibly long. It's 2 hours later, and still the queue.
But up on the hill, there's no time to worry about the conditions, as the lead runners, Sean and Brendan Boland, power over the slopes.
You know, you have low spots that you've got to get through. But I think really, I just enjoy it when I've finished, because it's just an immense feeling of satisfaction that you have for a few weeks afterwards, because you really push your body beyond its limit. Yeah, it's just down here.
I suppose it's an acquired taste doing these things. It's like you think halfway through you think this is awful, but then at the end of it you feel great, and then you look back and it is quite a good laugh in a strange sort of way.
Friday night now seems about 2 to 3 weeks ago to me, so it's a good way of having a compressed holiday.
Still in second place are another set of brothers, Andy and Joe Simmons. Both compete on a national level, but in much shorter events. One's lasting just a few hours, and it's only the second year they've been doing these 2-day mountain marathons.
I really enjoyed the challenge, and then the satisfaction of when you find the point you're looking for.
BV, Joe, is that the right one? BV, it's got to be, isn't it?
BV, yeah.
Probably helps that the last one is 12 months before this, so you have enough time to forget how miserable it really was.
Yeah, we don't do too many of them, so we forget.
How's it going?
Yeah.
Oh, shattered.
Nobody has completed all 40 of these mountain marathons, but Trevor Smith's done 29 and Dave Prentice 31. I guess the question must be, what keeps bringing them back?
I suppose there's a degree of masochism in it, there's bound to be. And I suppose we're always hoping to get one stage better than third veteran. We were third veteran last year, we were third veteran a few years before. We haven't quite got up to second vet, so I don't think we'll get to first vet.
I don't know when it was that it actually got professional, if you like, because, you know, back in the sort of in the 70s, it was quite a remarkable event, I think, and it was a unique event.
Every year it's different. We've been washed out once, we've had heat waves, we've woken up to 4 inches of snow once. It's a good event. It was the first of the kind of adventure racing events, and it's a good event. So we might have another.
You've got to accept some mud, haven't you? You've got to let the mud and rain.
So if the prospect of running around the hills in damp conditions with 3,000 other people doesn't really turn you on, There are lots of other fantastic things to see in what I think are the underestimated southern uplands, including the Grey Mare's Tail. 61-metre high waterfall, and back in the 80s when we had proper winters, I came here with some college friends and it was an ice climb, so we had a cold but wonderful and exciting day here. It really is a tremendous place, with the geology being the star of the show. When people mention Moffat to me, the first thing I would think of is sheep. And in fact, you can find the little things absolutely everywhere. But there are plenty more interesting things to see here. The Star Hotel, the world's narrowest hotel. Chapel Street, Scotland's shortest street. So after your ramblings, if you fancy something a little bit sweet and homemade, Moffat Toffee from the Moffat Toffee Shop is the place to go. Apparently, Blair, you've got something a bit stronger tucked away in the back. Oh, this is a great selection.
So what kind of whiskey do you like?
I'd normally drink a Speyside or an East Coast single malt.
Oh, well, I'll give you something that'll put tears in your chest.
So what is this?
This is from Islay.
An Islay malt?
Yeah. Don't drink it all. Put some water in it. Might help it.
It would definitely help out. This is really rather nice. It's quite strong though.
It is 50 odd proof.
50 odd proof. Okay, that'll keep me warm for the winter. So you might be thinking why I'm standing in a river with a very large bicycle pump or high-tech suction fishing device. Well, actually, it's to help me find some gold in this little stream. And Charlie Smart is going to show me how. It's amazing to think there's actually potentially gold in this.
You always check that in case you do get a nugget. If we are unfortunate enough to not get any gold, I've actually brought some with me.
To show me what I should have
To show
had.
you what you should have put in. Gold is heavy,
yep.
Very heavy. So all you need to do is what the river's actually doing. Goes under the water and you give it a good shake. And everyone says, how long do you do that for? And the answer is, I don't know. Now, we want to get rid of this stuff. All you do is under the water, backwards and forwards. Once you've got down to this stage, now you might find your gold.
That is it?
That's a tiny bit of gold.
And is that, what's that?
Yeah, that's gold.
So this little piece here?
Yeah.
And this little piece here?
Yeah. Right, so do you want to have a go yourself?
So if I feel softer ground, I shouldn't really be moving that too much, but more the pebbles and things.
I think for your first pan, that's about all you'll need.
No, but I've got the fever.
Leave that there.
Yep.
Take the pan and that in your hand.
Just in case anything falls out.
Put it right under the water.
Yep.
Now give it a good shake. Don't be frightened of it, give it a really good shake. That's fine. Okay, let me have the sieve.
Now I've got myself rather a lot of silt in here.
Give it a really good shake under the water.
Under the water?
Right under. More side to side. Now, lean your pan back a bit. Keep it under the water.
Give it another shake.
And give it a little shake, backwards and forwards. I guarantee while you're panning there, Duncan, you're thinking, am I throwing gold out?
Yes, I'm also thinking you've got to have a strong back for this. Okay, so...
So, if you've panned properly, the very last thing you should see is gold.
There's tiny, I think there might be a tiny, tiny little bit just in there.
I think there's one of the really minute bits in there. It is really minute, that. I can show you gold which I've panned. Let's put you some in there.
Well, you can see that's very obviously gold. Looking at this grouping, what do you think that's worth?
There's less than 1/10 of a gram there.
Right.
So maybe £1.
£1 worth of gold. Okay, so it's going to take me a couple of weeks before I can retire.
Yes, I think so, Duncan. Better luck next time. Now from the lowland to the Highland Hills as we join Lindsay Cannon in what has been described as the most beautiful glen in Scotland. Some 20 kilometres west of Loch Ness, Glen Affric contains one of the largest ancient Caledonian pine woods in Scotland, as well as spectacular lochs, moorland and mountains. The glen is designated a National Scenic Area and has recently been chosen as a National Nature Reserve.
So this is my favourite view of the glen here.
Oh, this is beautiful.
Looking right up over Loch Benevian to the islands and out to the Munros at the far end there. This is a great last example of the Caledonian pine forest.
I think what I particularly like, Stuart, is that the Scots pine, it often has this wonderful gnarled shape.
Very classic,
and,
sort of open
and also
top.
the redness of the bark is glorious.
Yeah, it really is, and it really is the sort of colour of the pine forest. You know, it's the colour of the deer, the fox, your pine marten, you know that.
Red squirrel.
Red squirrel as well, yeah. The open topness of it as well. It's very inviting for birds of prey.
The shapes are just fantastic.
Yep, these old ones we've got here, these round topped ones, they've obviously come up in a bit of space, and it's actually, well, some people believe that in the past the good timber was taken out and these big old ones obviously had the space, but they weren't chosen for, you know, for timber extraction.
So those fantastic shapes that, you know, I find really appealing, you're saying that they're the runts of the forest?
Well, not the runts, obviously they've got fantastic character to the woods, but you know, if you were coming in and you know, if you think about early man, if you were coming in to pick out trees to take, you wouldn't take some of these big old gnarly bent trees. They did, however, provide a very important use for people building, you know, houses, and the big roof beams and cottages were used from the Scots pine. These are two of the sort of classic ground flora you find in the ancient Caledonian pine forest. These lovely red ones.
Of course, added bonus.
Yeah, yeah. You can see the lovely purple colour there. And these lovely red cowberries as well. And you can see that it's so lush and vibrant, and also you've got so many young rowans through here that it's an indication that the management is really good and the forest is really regenerating really well.
Huge difference, because if you were in a planted woodland, none of this really exists, does it?
No,
you don't get this,
no,
you know, the ground cover.
You can't really recreate it. Something as old as this and something as diverse as this, and the health of it as well. It's so vibrant. You can see from all the different ages of the forest, and also the ground cover is just so luxuriant. It's really great.
And quite a lot of deadwood just lying around as well, Stuart.
Yeah, lots of deadwood lying down. And there's the old adage that, you know, there's more life in a dead tree than there is in a living one.
It's just so much more interesting. There's just so much more going on.
Yeah, it is. There's so much life in the woodland. You just have to look for it. It's not immediately recognisable, but once you start looking about and looking what's under your feet almost, and the life is there.
And the forest contains other hidden gems. Jeff Diamond is passionate about the wildlife to be found in the lochans of Glen Affric. There's something just here.
Oh yeah, hi.
Very small, I'm not sure, it's almost like a sort of tadpole.
It's quite a young common newt, I think.
Oh, look at that, brilliant. Yeah. Two little sets of legs.
There's quite a few amphibians in this loch, and can come here in the springtime, and it's just moving with toads.
Really teeming with life, isn't it? The pond edges, you know, once you start looking, oh, we maybe better put him back in the water.
Oh, he's getting
agitated. There we are.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah. Oh, a dragonfly's just landed on my arm.
Again, this is quite an important loching for dragonflies. See, look, if you look here, there's actually a dragonfly nymph casing.
So this is what the dragonfly has emerged from?
Yep, this nymph was actually in the loch. It could have been in the loch for up to 5 years. And it's come out of the water, and from the back, you can just see the back there? Yes. It's actually split, and from there the actual dragonfly emerges. It comes out crumpled wings at first, doesn't look very attractive until the wings start to dry. A few hours in the sun like this and the wings start to spread, and it's on the wing.
What sort of things would it feed on in the water?
You name it, anything that moves.
Fish?
It'll take fish.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite aggressive. It'll take fish, it'll take other dragonflies even, you know, smaller dragonflies. All it's there for is to eat, to grow to that sort of stage. Crawls out of the water, and within a day, in this beautiful sunshine, actually the wings are all crumpled and they start to emerge and become this beautiful dragonfly. We have 14 species of dragonflies, and of that 14, 4 of them are actually nationally very important.
It's quite difficult to get a good look at them though, because they are moving around so much. I mean, they're very busy, aren't they?
Very busy. As I say, they get 2 or 3 weeks. After 5 years underwater, this is their 2 or 3 weeks of real life. This is where everything's going on. This is them mating. This is them laying their eggs for the next generation.
So they're under the water, rather monster-like, for 2 to 5 years. Then they emerge. They get this moment of glory, and then it's gone.
And then it's gone. Yeah, that's them finished. Yeah. But the cycle starts all over again, and you just can't. Your imagination can't give you the numbers of actually nymphs that are there ready to emerge for next year and the year after.
Back on the hill, and the race is reaching its final stage. There's just a couple of checkpoints left for the elite class, and Sean and Brendan Boland are still in the lead.
I think we kind of know our strengths and weaknesses. We've done long endurance type mountain bike events in the past. Sean tends to be very strong in the early stages, whereas I tend to come through in the second half. So I guess we know how each other's works, and we know we're fairly evenly matched as well, so that helps. You know, we did a few long runs in the weeks leading up to the event to make sure we understand the pace that we would need to go at.
But at the penultimate checkpoint, there's a sting in the tail. It's so near the finish, yet if Brendan and Sean don't find it soon, they could lose out on the top spot. Success at last, and now it should be downhill all the way to victory. Just over 10 minutes behind are Joe and Andy Simmons, as confident as ever.
Here's a stream and here's a bend, so I guess you're not hiding anything.
Yeah, but we're not standing at the checkpoint.
You won't be far away.
These poor guys think that we were actually standing on the stream bed. The stream bed's actually another 50 metres to the left. And one of the judges told us that this is one of the most difficult places to find because there are 2 or 3 little confluence of streams here, and they've gone completely in the wrong direction. They're now about 80 to 100 metres lower than they should be, wasting valuable time.
Andy, got it! Andy!
Sorry guys that we weren't standing in the right place.
We didn't make it look very professional though, did we? Are there any elites ahead, do you know?
One group.
Right, go.
Has it been slick before this though, for the rest of the day?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Good luck.
Just a little behind are the third elite pair, Morgan Donnelly and Steve Birkinshaw. Now they're on the final hill just before the traverse to that awkward checkpoint. But Steve's strong point is his navigation. So what's his secret?
Just trying to be accurate and not make mistakes, which tends to be easy early on in the course, but later on when you're completely knackered and you get to a stage where everything's a blur and you can't sort of think straight, that's when it becomes really hard. You just want to avoid another hill at all costs, and you have to force yourself to go the right route rather than go round a bit. Basically go over the sort of the ridge line and then contour right. Contour right, yeah. So fairly obvious when we're in about the right place.
Steve's confident that they'll have no problem finding the checkpoint, and they've taken a high line directly to it.
That was very well found.
I'm jiggered.
I think one of the things that's most impressed me about the elite racers over the last 2 days is their ability to navigate at speed and make decisions, both under the pressure of competition but also when they're extremely tired. What they're trying to do is sight their bearing on these 2 high points. The last team that came in were pinpoint accurate with it, within 2 to 3 metres square. It is truly, truly impressive how they're finding these things.
Down at the finish line, the competitors from the other classes are already flooding back, triumphant, relieved and exhausted after 2 hard days on the hill. And here's the first of the elite category, Brendan and Sean Boland. A fantastic day it's been for them, just 4 hours 55 minutes.
Brendan, congratulations. How are you doing?
It was quite tough today. The ground was quite a bit rougher. I found it very hard going. I don't think I ate and drank enough either, because we were trying to push on. So I didn't bother eating as much as I should, so I suffered in the last hour and a half.
I found it a lot easier, a lot better today than yesterday. I was completely goosed yesterday.
Because I was stronger yesterday, I carried the tent and the stove today, so I carried more weight. Right. But it turns out he should have carried it. But there you go.
Now Now just entering the field at the top is Andy and Joe Simmons. They started 4 minutes after Brendan and Sean this morning, and they've slipped back just a little. They're now 12 minutes behind. But still an amazing race and good enough to get them second place.
Well, congratulations, that was fantastic today, yeah?
Yeah, thanks.
We saw you at the start this morning.
Mainly happy.
Yeah. Was it? I mean, you seem to. You must have hit all the checkpoints fairly comfortably.
Yeah. I guess you're only going to be very happy if you nail them all, and we didn't nail them all. I suppose there were 2, weren't there, where we wasted maybe 5 minutes or so.
But congratulations today, a great run and second place in the elite class. Well done.
We'll be back.
We'll be back.
Yeah, we've got to revenge that.
Sprinting down the hill now, Steve Birkinshaw and Morgan Donnelly. No mistakes today in their navigation. But starting this morning, they were 10 minutes behind the leaders, and they've not been able to make up that time.
It's a bit harder today, I think.
Really?
Well, less runnable, I'd say.
Yeah.
More tussocks.
Right.
Suited Steve better today.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Because you said yesterday you were feeling good.
I was fine, yeah. As soon as it gets really rough, then I'm a bit stronger than Morgs.
Right.
And up the hills, he's always stronger than me, so.
Okay, well done.
Thank you.
And for confirmation of the results of this year's event, Brendan and Sean Boland were first back with a total time of 11 hours, 11 minutes and 20 seconds. Andy and Joe Simmons were just minutes behind them, and taking third place, Morgan Donnelly and Steve Birkinshaw. And just before we go, let's look ahead to 2008, when I'm quite literally in the hot seat.
In January of next year, I'm taking part in the Strath Puffer, which is a 24-hour mountain bike marathon in the dead of winter in the north of Scotland. Now I have to learn about the technical side of mountain biking, because frankly, when it goes downhill, that's usually when I get off my bike.
So I enlisted the help of Strath Puffer veteran Neil Walker. Now I couldn't be in better hands. He used to train the British mountain bike team. But let's face it, it's a big step from enjoying a bit of leisurely off-roading to competing solo in Britain's toughest 24-hour race.
For riding round here, you want to be looking just inside of where you're going.
I'm actually just looking at you at the moment. So.
And what you find is as you look that way, you don't actually have to make any steering input.
Yeah.
The bike's always following where your eyes and your shoulders are going. And right to the point where you actually don't need a hand on the bars to do the steering. You can take your hand off.
This is where it goes horribly wrong.
And the bike wants to go where you're looking. Relax your right arm completely.
Relax my right arm, he says, like it's easy.
Now, I'm not quite sure I'm made for this, and I'm about to face 24 hours of it. And if the last 2 years are anything to go by, it'll be 24 hours of snow, sleet and rain.
Oh, Wing Commander. You know what? It's just as well I have my family at this stage. Oh my goodness. Well, the good thing is that we know that the saddle supports this central part of the body rather well. This part of the body, it doesn't support at all well. You might want to look there might be a swelling.
Thankfully, I'm still in my bike, and I am still training. And there's also more good news. Next year, the Adventure Show is also coming to radio. We'll be on air for 4 weeks, beginning on Saturday, February the 2nd at 7:05 in the morning. We'll have all the usual Adventure Show goodies and all the best information on how to make your weekend special. Come rain or shine, or even better, snow, we'll have a detailed report on conditions and where to go. So join us in February on TV and on Radio Scotland, where it's even better, you won't even have to see me. Bye for now.